Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. One of the biggest financial decisions you will ever make in your life is when you retire. And it's not just a financial decision, it's also a lifestyle one too. So it's one you want to get right. Now, you might think there's no such thing as the perfect retirement age, but research actually gives us a pretty good idea of when people tend to feel the happiest, most secure, and least regretful about stepping away from work. I don't know about you, but those factors seem to indicate that there might be a perfect age at which we could retire. So let's use this information to figure out when maybe the most ideal time to hang up our hat is and how to do it right. Let's start with the big picture. Only 54% of retirees actually retired when they wanted to. That means nearly half of all Americans had to scrap their retirement plans, and they had to either retire earlier than expected or later, and both of these situations come with challenges. Here's a stat that surprises a lot of people. 46% of retirees ended up retiring earlier than planned. But here's the kicker. Most of them didn't do it by choice. About a third retired due to a health issue, whether it was their own or a spouse's. And it's one thing to plan for a retirement at, say, 65, and then all of a sudden an illness shows up at, say, 58 or 60, and suddenly your hand is forced and you don't have a choice. Another third were pushed out of their positions due to company restructuring or layoffs. And let's be honest, re-entering the workforce at 60 is not always the easiest thing. Ageism is real, even though it's illegal. And then finally, the other third step away from the workforce to fill the role as a caregiver. Maybe it's caring for an aging parent or helping to raise their own grandkids. And sometimes life happens and being a caregiver takes priority over other things. If we're looking at early retirees who stepped away because they had enough money, well, that's only 21% of those who retired early but unexpected. So most people weren't walking away with confidence. They were walking away because they had no choice. And that can really take its toll. Having to retire on someone else's timeline rather than your own can create a lot of feelings of financial stress and uncertainty, and that can really weigh on you. That's why it's so important to build a strong financial foundation, because even if you have plans to work longer, sometimes life doesn't go according to plan. Now, on the flip side, about 11% of retirees end up working longer than they expected, often because they realized they weren't financially ready to step away from the workforce yet, or maybe they just weren't ready to give up work. So right off the bat, you can see that most people aren't retiring exactly according to plan, and that can cause a lot of regrets to creep in, which is why one of the most powerful things you can do is to start planning your retirement decades in advance. That gives you one of the most powerful things, and that's options. The earlier you start to plan, the more flexibility you can have with your retirement. All right, let's talk regrets, because they're very real, especially if you're forced into a retirement before you're ready. The most common one, not saving enough. A full 76% of retirees say they wish they had saved more consistently. And honestly, that's not surprising. If you're pushed into a retirement earlier than expected, for most people, it means they're probably not financially prepared. And that could very well mean you're retiring into a leaner lifestyle than you would have otherwise preferred. So the big takeaway here is to save early, save often. You will never regret having more options. Another big regret, closely tied to not saving enough, is claiming Social Security too early. 23% of retirees who claimed Social Security at age 62 said they regret it. And a survey from the Senior Citizens League found that many seniors don't fully understand that claiming early locks in a permanently reduced benefit until it's too late. Here's the deal. If you claim early at 62, your benefit you lock in will be permanently reduced by up to 30%. If you wait until full retirement age, which is 66 or 67 to claim, you'll get the full benefit you're entitled to. And if you wait until 70 for each year you delay past full retirement age, your benefit increases by 8%. And once you claim Social Security, generally speaking, that is locked in for life. And the difference can add up, and it can add up fast. Someone who takes Social Security at 62 might get around $1,400 a month. But if they had otherwise waited until 70, they could be looking at $2,500 a month or more. That's a big difference, especially if you live well into your 80s or your 90s. And here's the tricky part. If you are forced into an early retirement, you may not have enough in savings and you may need an income stream. So you may feel like you're forced to claim Social Security early, even if that's not the best long-term plan for you. So this is why it's so important to plan ahead. That gives you more flexibility so you can make the best decision for yourself now as well as in the future. And finally, for some early retirees, it's not just about the money. Some felt like they stepped into a void and lost their sense of purpose and direction. So yeah, stepping into retirement, if it's unplanned, whether emotionally or financially, that can lead to a lot of regrets. But what about those who delay retirement? Retiring late isn't regret-free either. A survey by New York Life found that nearly half of all those who delayed retirement wish they had retired about 4 years earlier than they did. Why? Well, many retirees realized a little bit too late that they ended up trading their best and healthiest years for more time in an office. And then once they finally did pull the trigger, they start thinking, wow, I should have done this sooner. Some even say they truly underestimated how much joy they would get from their hobbies or travel or spending time with family, and they wish they had done it sooner when they were more physically able to enjoy it. So whether you're retiring early or retiring late, most regrets tend to creep in when you feel like you were unprepared for it or you were forced into it, not on your own timetable. But here's the silver lining. Most retirees are actually really happy. In fact, 89% of retirees say they're generally happy in retirement, and 86% say they're enjoying life. There's even research indicating that happiness increases with age, especially after the age of 65. A survey from AARP found that those with the highest retirement satisfaction were actually well beyond the age of 70. They had higher life satisfaction than those in their 50s and 60s who retired. So yes, retirement can be amazing. But there's a catch. Your happiness in retirement is closely tied to your financial comfort. But the good news is that 77% of retirees say they have enough money to live comfortably. But that number does drop sharply if retirees end up carrying consumer debt or if they're relying solely on Social Security as an income source without any other funding sources for their retirement. It also drops pretty sharply for those who were forced into a retirement earlier than expected. Unfortunately, nearly 1 in 3 retirees say they've had trouble making ends meet at some point in their retirement. And that's a real wake-up call. I don't want anyone to be in that statistic. So what's the perfect age to retire? There is no one-size-fits-all answer, but the data and research tends to show that 65 to 67 hits the sweet spot for most Americans. And this is largely because you're eligible for Medicare at 65. You've likely reached full Social Security retirement age by 66 or 67, meaning you're not taking a penalty for claiming early and you have a larger monthly benefit. And if you've saved consistently, your investments are likely near their peak. You could have easily had 30 or 40 years of compounding under your belt at this point, so you're in pretty good financial shape. So that's when a lot of retirees feel financially ready, but they also feel young enough to enjoy their freedom. Here's my 2 cents. I think there's far more risk associated with retiring later than you would have otherwise wished, at least from the standpoint of happiness. If you end up working longer, trading more of your time for a paycheck, wishing you were doing something else, you can't get that back. Time is a limited resource, and once it's spent, it's gone. On the flip side, I don't see the same downside to retiring early, assuming you're financially prepared. If you're forced into an early retirement without being financially prepared, well, that's an entirely different story. That can mean entering retirement in a much leaner situation than you would have otherwise hoped for. And you don't want to spend the next 20 or 30 years constantly stressed about money or putting too much pressure on your portfolio to carry the load. But if you're financially ready, well, honestly, I don't think there's such a thing as retiring too early, because in that case, you're not really retiring. You're choosing freedom and you're choosing it on your own terms. So what's the best thing you can do to set yourself up to retire on time and with the fewest regrets? Well, here are the big ones. Start saving early. Even if it's small, compound growth is your best friend. Max out your retirement accounts whenever you can, whether it's your 401k, your IRA, whatever accounts are available to you. Time your Social Security decision. Weigh this decision very carefully. When you claim Social Security is important, so optimize your strategy. Eliminate your debt before retirement, especially high interest debt like credit cards. And make sure to test drive your retirement budget. Try living on your projected retirement income for a few months and see how it feels before you actually step away from the workforce. And finally, don't just plan financially. Plan for how you'll spend your time. Your happiness depends just as much on purpose and social connection as it does money. I really love the idea of setting yourself up to be able to financially retire as early as possible. But I'm not saying that you should retire early. If you have a job you love, keep doing it. But I think if you can put yourself in a position to financially have the choice to step away from the workforce whenever you want to, that is a very powerful position to be in. Because at the end of the day, the perfect retirement age isn't just a number. It's the moment when you've set yourself up to choose freedom on your own terms. If we're going by the data, for most Americans, that age is going to be between 65 and 67. Not too early, not too late, just right. But as for you, well, that depends on your personal situation. What do you think is your sweet spot retirement age? And are you on track to hit it? Let me know in the comments down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. We're missing a plant because I'm moving and I had to give away my plants. So, last week of filming in this place. Sad, but onward and upward. Hopefully the next place looks good. Welcome to Canada. I'm basically Canadian. That's to keep in. Keep in. Can I help you? My dog just came around the corner, peeked at me and he's like, all right, you're busy, sorry. Stop texting. I'm going to cry. That was a great take. And then financial freedom. No, I don't want to say financial freedom, I want to say freedom.